You see, he whispered. It was a name I was already using at Hogwarts. To my most intimate friends only, of course. You think I was going to use my filthy muggle father's name forever? I, in whose veins run the blood of Salazar Slytherin himself. Through my mother's side, I keep the name of a foul, common muggle who abandoned me even before I was born, just because he found out his wife was a witch? No, Harry, I fashioned myself a new name, a name I knew wizards everywhere would one day fear to speak, when I had become the greatest sorcerer in the world. Harry's brain seemed to have jammed. He stared numbly at Riddle, at the orphan boy who had grown up to murder Harry's own parents and so many others. At last he forced himself to speak. You're not, he said, his quiet voice full of hatred. Not what? Snapped Riddle. Not the greatest sorcerer in the world, said Harry, breathing fast. Sorry to disappoint you and all that, but the greatest wizard in the world is Albus Dumbledore. Everyone says so. Even when you were strong, you didn't dare try to take over at Hogwarts. Dumbledore saw through you when you were at the school. He still frightens you now, wherever you're hiding these days. The smile had gone from Riddle's face to be replaced by a very ugly look. Dumbledore has been driven out of this castle by the mere memory of me, he hissed. He's not as gone as you might think, Harry retorted. He was speaking at random, wanting to scare Riddle, wishing rather than believing it to be true. Riddle opened his mouth but froze. Music was coming from somewhere. Riddle whirled around to stare at the empty chamber. The music was growing louder. It was eerie, spine-tingling, unearthly. It lifted the hair on Harry's scalp and made his heart feel as though it was swelling to twice its normal size. Then, as the music reached such a pitch that Harry felt it vibrating inside his own ribs, flames erupted at the top of the nearest pillar. A crimson bird the size of a swan had appeared, piping its weird music to the vaulted ceiling. It had a glittering gold tail as long as a peacock's and a gleaming golden talons, which were gripping a ragged bundle. A second later, the bird was flying straight at Harry. It dropped the ragged thing it was carrying at his feet, then landed heavily on his shoulder. As it folded its great wings, Harry looked up and saw it had long, sharp beak and a beady black eye. The bird stopped singing. It sat still and warm next to Harry's cheek, gazing steadily at Riddle. That's a phoenix, said Riddle, staring shrewdly back at it. Fox? Harry breathed, and he felt the bird's golden claws squeeze his shoulder gently. And that, said Riddle, eyeing the ragged thing that Fox dropped, that's the old school sorting hat. So it was. Patched, frayed, and dirty, the hat lay motionless at Harry's feet. Riddle began to laugh again. He laughed so hard that the dark chamber rang with it, as though 10 riddles were laughing at once. This is what Dumbledore sends his defender? A songbird and an old hat? Do you feel brave, Harry Potter? Do you feel safe now? Harry didn't answer. He might not see what use Fox or the sorting hat were, but as long as he was no longer alone, he waited for Riddle to stop laughing, with his courage mounting. To business, Harry, said Riddle, still smiling broadly. Twice in your past, in my future, we have met, and twice I failed to kill you. How did you survive? Tell me everything. The longer you talk, he added softly, the longer you stay alive. Harry was thinking fast, weighing his chances. Riddle had the wand. He, Harry, and Fox, and the sorting hat, neither of which would be good in a duel. It all looked bad, all right. But the longer Riddle stood there, the more life was dwindling out of Ginny. And in the meantime, Harry noticed suddenly Riddle's outline was becoming clearer, more solid. If it had to be a fight between him and Riddle, the better sooner than later. No one knows why you lost your powers when you attacked me, said Harry abruptly. I don't know myself, but I know why you couldn't kill me, because my mother died to save me. My common muggle-born mother, he added, shaking with suppressed rage. She stopped you killing me, and I've seen the real you. I saw you last year. You're a wreck. You're barely alive. That's what all your power got you. You're hiding. You're ugly. You're foul. Riddle's face contorted, then he forced it into an awful smile. So your mother died to save you. Yes, that's a powerful countercharm. I can see now. There's nothing special about you. After all, I wondered, you see. There are strange likenesses between us, after all. Even you must have noticed. Both half-bloods, orphans, raised by muggles, probably the only two parcel mouths to come to Hogwarts since the great Slytherin himself. We even look something alike. But after all, it was merely a lucky chance that saved you from me. That's all I wanted to know. Harry stood, tense, waiting for Riddle to raise his wand. But Riddle's twisted smile was widening again. Now, Harry, I'm going to teach you a little lesson. Let's match the powers of Lord Voldemort, heir of Salazar Slytherin, against famous Harry Potter, and the best weapons Dumbledore can give him. He cast an amused eye over Fawkes and the Sorting Hat, then walked away. Harry, fear spreading up his numb legs, watched Riddle stop between the high pillars and look up the stone face of Slytherin. High above him in the half-darkness, Riddle opened his mouth wide and hissed, but Harry understood what he was saying. Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four. Harry wheeled around to look up at the statue, Fawkes swaying on his shoulder. Slytherin's gigantic stone face was moving, horror-struck. Harry saw his mouth opening wider and wider to make a huge black hole. And something was stirring inside the statue's mouth. Something was slithering up from its depths. Harry backed away until he hit the dark chamber wall. And as he shut his eyes, he felt Fawkes' wings sweep up his cheek as he took flight. Harry wanted to shout, "Don't leave us!" But what chance did Phoenix have against the king of serpents? Something huge hit the stone floor of the chamber. Harry felt it shudder. He knew it was happening. He could sense it. He could almost see the giant serpent uncoiling itself from Slytherin's mouth. Then he heard Riddle's hissing voice. Kill him! The basilisk was moving toward Harry. He could hear its heavy body slithering across the dusty floor. His eyes tightly shut. Harry began to run blindly sideways, his hands outstretched, feeling his way. Voldemort was laughing. Harry tripped. He fell hard into the stone and tasted blood. The serpent was barely feet from him. He could hear it coming. There was a loud, explosive spitting sound right above him. And then something heavy hit Harry so hard that he was smashed into the wall, waiting for fangs to sink through his body. He heard more mad hissing, something thrashing wildly off the pillars. He couldn't help it. He opened his eyes wide enough to squint at what was going on. The enormous serpent, bright, poisonous green, thick as an oak trunk, had raised itself high in the air, and its great blunt head was weaving drunkenly between the pillars. As Harry trembled, ready to close his eyes if it turned, he saw what had distracted the snake. Fawkes was soaring around its head, and the basilisk was snapping furiously at him with fangs long and thin as sabers. Fawkes dived. His long golden beak sank out of sight, and a sudden shower of dark blood spattered the floor. The snake's tail thrashed, narrowly missing Harry before Harry could shut his eyes. It turned. Harry looked straight into its face and saw that its eyes, both its great, bulbous yellow eyes, had been punctured by the phoenix. Blood was streaming to the floor, and the snake was spitting in agony. No! Harry heard Riddle screaming. Leave the bird! Leave the bird! The boy is behind you! You can still smell him! Kill him! The blinded serpent swayed confusedly, still deadly. Fawkes circling its head, piping its eerie song, jabbing here and there its scaly nose as the blood poured from its ruined eyes. Help me, Harry muttered wildly. Someone, anyone. The snake's tail whipped across the floor again. Harry ducked. Something soft hit his face. The basilisk had swept the Sorting Hat into Harry's arms. Harry seized it. It was all he had left, his only chance. He rammed it onto his head and threw himself flat on the floor as the basilisk's tail swung over him. Help me, Harry thought, his eyes screwed tight under the hat. Please help me. There was no answering voice. Instead, the hat contracted as though An invisible hand was squeezing it very tightly. Something very hard thudded on top of Harry's head, almost knocking him out. Stars winking in his front eyes, he grabbed the top of the hat to pull it off his head and felt something long and hard beneath it. A gleaming silver sword had appeared inside the hat, its handle glittering with rubies the size of eggs. "Kill the boy! Leave the bird! The boy is behind you! Sniff! Smell him!"